Hi, I'm Bronwyn Williams, and this is my colleague Tumelo Mojapelo, and we are back with our 15-minute Flux Foreplay conversations, where we are talking to some of the most important and most interesting and most influential thought leaders around topics of the future and foresight in general. And today our topic is the idea of a trend. Many of us think of trends as being something that comes up on the news or on the economic indicators, things like unemployment or the price of eggs. But a trend can be much more than that. Certainly the way I describe it is a trend is something, really anything, that has an instance across both space and across time. This means trends can be both qualitative and quantitative. And to challenge me on that thinking, maybe add a few more thoughts to the conversation, today we are joined by Dion Chang, the founder of Flux Trends. So Dion, over to you. How would you describe what a trend really is when it comes to the way you approach working with your own business and other people's businesses?
Yeah, hi Bronwyn, hi Tommy. And yes, I think the Flux Trends is business strategy. So I've never wanted to look at trends as a passing fad, but something that really, I think very specifically would alter a business model or disrupt a sector really, really dramatically. So for example, when I first founded Flux, it was just the start of e-hailing, Uber. We had just got acclimatized to social media. So everything was changing very, very rapidly. So when you started tracking not only the technological trends, but what the ripple effect is on one sector or ancillary sectors or partners that would work within for that company, then the impact of those trends became very, very apparent and yeah, are far-reaching as well.
So you just mentioned the impact of trends and how they are far-reaching. Why do you believe that leaders should actually keep track of them? Because I mean, like Bronwyn said, a trend, I mean, it goes across space and time. What is the importance as a business leader of keeping track of this development over time? As sometimes they, like you say, cross into other industries. Why would a leader need to be cognizant or aware of these trends?
I think two things. I think firstly, we are going through really, really difficult times. I think from crossing into, the 2020s, from the pandemic onwards, you've just kind of heard this term, keeping up with the velocity of change, and people know that change has just become sort of exponentially faster. So to be able to do that is really, really difficult. Secondly, is I think because change becomes so difficult, a lot of companies or leaders just look very, very inwardly. And you need to, and I completely understand that, you've got to keep the ship afloat, you've got to steer the ship, you've got to keep your operational things going through. But because it changes so quickly, you have to put your head up every now and again and scan that horizon and see what is changing. Because you might have a strategy that you think is going to be, well, I think, a 10-year strategy is already out the window, something like a 2 or 5 year strategy. But if you make or if there's a slight change within your business and that strategy is just, say, 2 degrees off, in 3 to 5 years time, that is going to be 25 degrees off from where you want it to be. And that could be very, very disastrous for your business. And because things change so quickly, then those undercurrents can also sweep you away totally.
Thank you for that, Jan. You talked about how if you don't look upright, even though right now you're like 2 degrees off, in a few years' time, you're 25 degrees off. How can business leaders, whilst keeping track of trends, be able to maybe adjust or tweak or even pivot to ensure that they're maybe not harnessing the potential of the trend or maybe offsetting the impact the trend can have on either their business or their business models?
I think one of the important things about trends, and I think about what we also do at Flux, is we join the dots. So things that are seemingly not connected or disconnected actually are, and also what that ripple effect really, really is. So I think what is important for business owners is to look not just where the trends are going or what the trends are, but what the blind spots in your company or your strategy really is. And I think that's a lot of what a lot of people don't do. That you formulate a strategy, you say, okay, this is what's going to happen, but you don't consider the unintended consequences of what you think is a great innovation strategy, or otherwise you miss the blind spots that could just take your business out. And I think those little blind spots and those undercurrents are becoming a lot more apparent and a lot more dangerous for companies to ignore.
Like what you're saying about them becoming a bit more dangerous and about looking for blind spots and unintended consequences. I'm just a simple business owner. I've just bumped into this podcast video and I'm like, how do I then firstly apply this anticipatory thinking to my organization or my life? So where do I start? Where do I start tracking trends? Do I do it as an individual? Do I follow an organization like Flux Trends? Or do I just hope for the best and maybe I'll stumble into a trend? Like, what is like the step-by-step process, as in now I'm literally coming across this and this is news for me. And I'd also like to either A, stay ahead of the curve, or B, use the opportunities, or C, look at or explore unintended consequences or blind spots. What would be the steps I'd follow? Obviously, I mean, simple steps that I would follow so that I can do this every day as a practice, something that I build into my daily habits.
So we really boiled the mantra down to two simple things. Number one, understand the world, and number two, so that you can change the world. If you don't understand the world, or you don't understand the context of the world, then you're not going to be able to change. You might not be able to change the world, but you can change the trajectory of your business to be able to do that. So, debates, the kind of what's going on with climate change and sustainability. So there's surface things about ESG and sustainability and that are going on. What we do at Flux, and this is what I hope the business owners will take through, is you're starting to see how that is going to not only affect your logistics. So in extreme weather, with the extreme heat starts melting the tar on your road, so you can't actually transport goods, or pipes start freezing up, so you can't get, a dairy farmer can't get milk to a pasteurization plant. Those kind of things start happening. And then you start looking at what we track are kind of very early signals, but they're coming. So where we are at the moment is we are now starting to breed heat-resistant cows and heat-resistant apples. So we are starting to mess with the DNA of nature in order to try and protect what's happening, not really kind of solving the problem. But those are the things that will start affecting your business. So if you're a farmer, that is absolutely, a cost to you. There are farmers that are putting in misting kind of mechanisms within their livestock to keep them cooler. Your price goes up. Your labor force that comes to harvest, which is seasonal, maybe can only work in the evenings. It changes so many things down to, for example, grape farmers, the sugar content of a grape. So your cultivar of what your wine really is not what you promise to the customer. So there's so many different but very dramatic ripple effects that will affect you as a business, no matter what sector you're in.
So you've mentioned we have to understand the world, and we also have to change the world. What method do you use to understand the world? So is there like a methodology that you use in your business, or do you use the existing methodologies to actually understand and scan what's going on in the world?
So when I started this company, 18 years ago, I thought, let's just use trends, and that has worked out very well for us. So the acronym TRENDS stands for technology, the state of retail, the state of the economy, the natural world, diplomacy, and socio and cultural trends. So if the main trend briefing, that's one of the most popular ones, the state we're in, uses that acronym. But if you start putting all of the trends and applying those to your business, you will see that you can join the dots between the six pillars, and it gives you an executive snapshot of where the world is going and where it is. So you'll get a good idea from a social cultural influence like your Gen Zs to what's happening in the economy and the geopolitical impact on your company. So it's a well-rounded acronym that's going to help you steer into the future.
And then with changing the world, because you've explained understanding the world and classifying the signals and the trends that you pick up, how would you then advise then anyone who's watching this, like how would they start on an individual and maybe then rising up to an organizational level, how they would actually be able to change the world, and where would they begin?
So, for example, I think the biggest conflict that we're seeing at the moment, and this is just to give you an idea of how long we study trends, and it's not just a quick fad that happens within a year or so. So we've been tracking Generation Z for, gosh, near on 15 years. So only when they were first just getting into their teens, we knew that this generation, the first digital natives of humanity, were going to be very, very different. Their thought processes, the learning, all of that thing was going to be very different. Now that they're fully into the workforce, we're seeing this huge generational conflict that happens in work. So the trends aren't just technological or they're external trends that come into your company, but they are also internal trends as well that will affect the culture and the workforce of that. So that said, now that we've got 15 years of Gen Z research under our belts, and we kind of know them as consumers as well as a workforce, we've already started on Generation Alpha, which are the children of the millennials, and the oldest ones are only now getting into their teens. And so like Gen Z, we've started that very, very early. And that is the way you can change the world. So in terms of generational conflict in the workplace, you're starting to see an older workforce or older leadership dig their heels in and say, but this is how things have been done all the time, and you've got to fit into that. Whereas you've got this huge workforce, and specifically for the African continent, it's a very, very large Gen Z continent on Africa. That is going to come and change. And if they are already turning 30, they are going to be the managers within your organization. They are going to change it, whether you like it or not. So it's to meet them halfway, to build those bridges, and you are able to change that culture and then change the trajectory and then change the world according to your company.
So basically, if I understand it correctly, so understanding world, you need to classify it, whatever. And then the change in the world is to understand that change doesn't only impact, is not created or is made to impact people by using technology or innovation or disruption. It can also come from the human side of things. So it's also tracking how human beings interact, what generations we're living. Because I mean, it seems like it's not something that you do in 2 seconds, just tracking how a generation grows over time to see where they end up. Am I correct in saying that?
Yeah, for example, so I'm busy tracking, and I've been doing it for 18 months now, is looking at demographic change around the world. So this are not only social contracts that have changed. So within a family, what is a nuclear family, but what is the social contract, the impact on a work environment, on culture? What does that mean for families, for relationships, for aging populations around the world? There are so many impacts in terms of retail, in terms of healthcare, in terms of workforces. So it's a really, really big kind of body that you're studying. And I think what like Flux does is we distill that information. That was my original plan to be able to do this in terms of trends, is distill that information so that it becomes a lot more understandable, but it also allows different companies in different sectors to join those dots, and we help them to join the dots and understand that world. So yes, you can make changes, or you can avoid going down a very, very wrong path.
Thank you so much, Dion, for your time and just sharing what trends are and how they've actually had an impact on not only the world as we know it, as we see it, external world, but our internal world. So as in our organizations, our families, because that's what I'm picking up from this discussion today, that you've been tracking technology, but technology has had an impact on this young generation, and it's created this kind of a ripple effect. And it's not something, so if you're a person who needs to like scan or look for trends, you must start now, because it takes time to see in how trends build momentum and actually become useful, not only for your personal application, but for your organization as well, right? Because you just mentioned the Gen Z, and also, so I mean, you're also following Gen Alpha as well. Do you feel like with Gen Alpha, just a quick question, they will most probably have an impact on the world sooner, so at a younger age than Gen Z?
quite strongly already, and they haven't even entered their proper teen years, you can sort of see this kind of behavioral pattern that's coming out that's only going to get enhanced. But also, just a final point is also when you're tracking trends as well, I think people get very, very emotionally connected to something, and they put their kind of personal lens onto it. And I think what we've learned over the years, if you're going to track the trends, you really, really have to step aside. You've got to be a lot more objective, not subjective, and it's happening. So you can't take a trend personally, but you've got to be able to see it for what it is, whether you like it or not, and then in a very, very kind of just a sort of make sense of something and say, okay, how is this going to affect that? I might not like the way Gen Z works. I might not like where Gen Alpha is coming through, but it is going to impact my life and my business. But so how do I do that? And I think it's to take that kind of personal lens away from it, and then just put it through a very clear business and future lens and say, how do we adapt to this?
Thank you so much, Dion, for your time. For those who are watching, please continue to subscribe, like, and share these videos. We have so many other videos of 15-minute conversations we've had with other trend experts. Please continue to stay tuned and learn from our experts. Thank you so much, Dion.